Hi and welcome to Being Lost by Manda Mellett, courtesy of Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1 Lost. This'll be you one day when you fuck all this up. The shadowy figure by my side says snidely, pointing to the scene playing out in front of me. The second version of Snake, stripped of his colour, stands stoically as full-strength brandy is dribbled over his back. His expression doesn't hide that he knows exactly what to expect, as I do myself. I've watched how this plays out often enough, repeated time and time again in my dreams. Unable to turn away, I stare on as Blade, the Tucson chapter's enforcer, lights the blowtorch and burns off Snake's Satan's Devil tattoo. I can smell burning flesh, the air so tainted that I've got the taste in my mouth. Bile rises in my stomach as I wonder for the 100th time whether I'd be able to endure the same ordeal as soundly as my ex-prez. Snake only moves when the punching drummer, the prez of the mother chapter, forces him to, then rights his head and spits teeth out of his mouth, taking blow after blow. He doesn't beg, doesn't ask for forgiveness, or offer excuses, or utter any plea for clemency. Only involuntary grunts and gasps escape until his body is unmoving and prone. The bullet to his head is more symbolic than necessary. I think to myself, the man was already dead. It comes to us all, the man in my dream tells me. I'd like to tell you it doesn't hurt much, but I'm not going to lie. Hurts like a fucking bitch. Worst pain of my life. He laughs maniacally. What will you be like, I wonder? Will you be able to take it, or will you be like him instead? The scene has moved on. Next up is Polk, the ex-sergeant-at-arms, who, unlike his prez, stands screaming, begging for a bullet instead. His shouts grow louder when the blowtorch burns the patch off his back, the sound of his anguish only fading when the hard punches and kicks finally shut him up. Will you beg like him or take it like a man? As one thing's for certain, you're going to fuck up. One day this will be you lost. I turn to look at my tormentor to tell him that I'm not going to fuck up, but the spectre is fading, almost totally gone when his last words reach me. I'll be waiting for you in hell, brother. I shake my head to clear the vestiges of last night's nightmare away, bringing myself back to the much pleasanter present. The fresh smell of blowing off this ocean reaches my nostrils. Pelicans fly overhead in formation, looking like they're a flock of pterodactyls. Seagulls bask, the more energetic rolling and grunting beneath us, and squirrels pop their heads up from the undergrowth. Never get tired of this, Dart shields his eyes from the sun, watching the birds pass. That's because you're still a desert boy at heart, I mock him. True, he answers with a grin. Will you ever get homesick for Tucson? I ask my VP. He's made a life for himself here in San Diego over the past 3 years, but still something drives me to inquire. He'd originally come as my temporary right-hand man when the trouble with the club had blown up, but he'd stayed, and his transfer had become permanent. One important reason was to be close to the specialists treating his adopted son Tyler, who had sickle cell disease, but due to a bone marrow transplant had recovered. Thank fuck. When I'd first met him, he'd been a sickly kid, prone to distressing seizures. Now you wouldn't know there had ever been anything wrong with him. Dart seems to be considering my question seriously. Changes everywhere, Loss. Tucson's become a different club over the years. Oh, for the better, not the worse. My brothers have all almost found old ladies, something I never thought would happen. He breaks off to chuckle. Since I left, Hart's got a new woman, and Peg, Rock, Mouse, and even fucking Blade have fallen. New faces have come in, some have gone. Things don't stop moving, which is just how it should be. He looks sideways at me. I didn't know it then, but it had been time for me to move on. I feel the honour the club bestowed on me every fucking day. When I first rode into San Diego, I never imagined I'd step into the role of VP. Add to that, I gained a wife and a family. I couldn't be fucking happier, man. Do I miss Tucson? How could I not? But I've no yearning to return there. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. As much as I feel, without the women and kids that is. How the fuck did I, the man known for losing everything, end up the president of the Satan's Devils MC San Diego chapter? That question has me beat. I might have been in the role for 3 years now, but I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop, which is bound to at some point. Fuck knows, I know that better than anyone. How's the baby? Niran, the man standing to Dart's other side, asks him conversationally. Cute as a button and already full of mischief. Love for his 1-year-old daughter shines from his eyes. Tyler is besotted with her, though I can't see that. Niran chuckles. The 8-year difference between them could see him getting fed up with her in his space. Now she's sweet, but when she starts cramping his style, he shakes his head. You got experience of that? I seem to recall he was an only child. But it seems the background searching on him we hadn't let him know this. Sister? Nah, I was an only child. But my friend had one much younger. Fought like a cat and dog in the end. She used to follow him everywhere. Cute at first, but not so much when we became teenagers. Dart harums. Ha, I can see that happening. Yeah, it's already hard catering for the age gap. Tyler wants to do things any boy of his age does, but it's a hassle taking Isla out. You've no fucking idea how much a 1-year-old needs. I slap his back. Think we do, brother. Looks like a fucking baby store when Alex brings her in. Stroller, diapers, formula, changing bag, blankets, spare clothing, and toys. My voice trails off as I finish my list. Dart laughs, and I wouldn't change it for the world. Alex coping okay. Listing the equipment had reminded me just how much work a baby must be. Workload's been fairly light, and most of it she's been able to do from home while the baby's asleep. There's a touch of pride in Dart's voice. So there should be. The Satan's Devils had paid for Alex to complete her studies. Now she's qualified, she's the official club lawyer. Luckily there's not been much trouble lately that's required much more than her help, other than reviewing contracts for her business. Last time she was called on to help a brother in real trouble was when Truck from Tucson got himself locked up. Other than that, there was one of Red's crew in Las Vegas who the cops had picked up for having drunk too much and getting into a fight. Alex had stepped in and he'd been letting off with a warning. I've a lot of respect for Dart's old lady. I'm glad she's working for the club. We all stare out at the scenery for a moment. My attention is caught by a kid trying to get too close to the seals who've adopted the beach here, but her dad gets to her in time. The seals are friendly enough as long as no one disturbs them, but they must be tempting for a child. Ask, Dart instructs, turning his head the other way, facing Niran head on. My VP has gotten us all relaxed before addressing the issue that brought us here, something Niran hadn't wanted to bring up in front of the club. Niran was the first black member of the Satan's Devils MC in any of our chapters. As well as being responsible for the Satan's Devils acquiring a new lawyer, Dart had also brought the club into the 21st century. When he'd gotten together with Alex and adopted her son as his own, he'd raised the question, what happened if Tyler grew up and wanted to prospect? We'd been a whites-only club up to that point, mainly as no one had ever brought it up. Faced with that query, it hadn't taken long for our outdated bylaws to be changed. Niran had been brought on board as a prospect shortly after and had been patched in after serving his time. He's been sitting around the table for a couple of years now. He's serious, always thinks before speaking, and is a fucking good man to have at your side. Dart had done good when he encouraged him to join. I look around Dart, casting my gaze on Niran for a moment. He's been spending time with the Sergeant at Arms, proving like Grumbler, his foremost thought is keeping the club safe. A few months back when Grumbler had landed dirty side down, Niran had done what needed done without being asked and took over for a while as Grumbler's proxy. He finally addresses the question he brought us here to ask. Who was Shark? Shark was one of Snake's men, I tell him, my jaw clenching. Niran nods. That's what I thought. He considers his next words carefully. I wasn't here at the time, but I've heard his name mentioned as if he was fucking Satan himself. Didn't want to dredge up what went down, not in front of the club, not without cluing you in first. Appreciate that, brother. It's never going to be easy to do the unmentionable, bringing up names of the men who betrayed us in the past. Bringing things through lost in our rear view into the present is always going to be hard. 3 years ago, the San Diego chapter nearly ceased to exist when it came out that Snake, the president at the time, had persuaded 8 other men that the drug trade was lucrative, even though the Satan's Devils had decided years back that they didn't want to touch it. Not only that, he'd painted the press of the mother chapter in Tucson as weak and ineffective and had formed a plot to kill Drummer. Snake's plan, having disposed of Drummer, he himself would then have taken his place. It wouldn't have been a change for the better. I shudder even thinking about it. Such immunity couldn't go unpunished. Snake and his sergeant-at-arms Polk had been dispatched to meet Satan, and the other members were sent out bad. Almost half the fucking club lost in one fell swoop. I put up my hands expecting to lose my patch. I was guilty. I hadn't seen what was happening. Hadn't had a clue how Snake had turned. That I was left wearing my colours was a surprise and one I didn't deserve. And the shocks didn't stop there. While I had otherwise respected the hell out of Drummer, he'd ignored my past, both recent and history, and proposed my move from the VP spot into the Prez's seat. Drummer's proposal was met with approval by the decimated club as they voted me in. I suppose there was little choice at that point. Dart, initially only here to support me temporarily, had gained the confidence and respect of the club, and he took over my old position as VP. Dart had been invaluable in keeping this chapter going at a time when I wasn't certain we would survive. The remaining members had nearly chosen to walk away from the club. No one, including me, who wasn't in Snake's inner circle, had had a clue anything was wrong. Until the betrayal came to light, all of us would have pledged our lives for the men we'd ridden beside. Just surviving those first few months had been really hard. The remaining chairs around the table far too spaced out for anyone's liking. Though they had been tested harder than ever before, our prospects at the time, Al, Lloyd and Dave, had all proved themselves and had joined us, taking the road names Juice, Reboot and Keeper respectively. Then, a year later, Niran had moved from prospect to member and was brought to the table as well. Strangely enough, without picking up a road name. Fuck knows why, but none have fallen into place which suit. 8 men out, 4 new bloods in. Slowly we were regaining our strength and the trust which had been lost. But a reference to Snake was enough of a reminder that could threaten to send men's mind back to that dark time, and how the certainty of life continuing without huge potholes on the road couldn't be guaranteed. It was a bad fucking time, Dark voices my thoughts. Thought we might lose the club. Even Drummer had doubts we could pull through. Each man who stayed had lost brothers they trusted with their fucking lives. Prospects don't know shit, but it was easy to tell the mood of the club at the time. Niran jerked his head forward to the VP. Wondered what I stepped into, if truth be told. But everyone pulled together and got there, which is thanks to you, VP, and you, Prez. I go to refute it, but shut my mouth. It's still my view the VP had done most to do with forging a cohesive unit out of the men we had left. Men who were and remained fiercely loyal to the chapter and their way of life. It took more than a moment to stop silently questioning each other as we'd made sure we had all the bad apples out. We'd taken time to heal, and from the reaction around the table when Shark's name was mentioned, are still healing. It had been Smoker's mention of him at last night's church that found us taking some space to discuss it today. Niran had judged it rightly. Old history was best not resurrected in front of the whole club. Smoker has simply reported seeing Shark in our town, a man whose presence wasn't wanted or desired, and who had been banned from ever showing his face in this part of California for the rest of his life. Just the mere mention of his sighting had caused the table to erupt. It wasn't time for a reasonable conversation. So a man's back in town who shouldn't be here, Niran sums up. What's your gut feel, Prez? Is he here to cause trouble for us? I can't rule it out. I stare out over the ocean for a moment. A sensible man, out bad with our club, would never show his face in San Diego again. You want us to actively look for him? I think before replying to Niran, do I want to waste club resources searching for a man who might already be gone? A man with any brains in his head wouldn't linger here long, however important the reason that brought him back. I think it's better to have eyes out and be wary. If he's found, I want to bring him to the compound. Need to have words and find out why the fuck he's returned.